Hi, welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm trying to calm down every day. I think that people are uptight these days, more so than perhaps in the past. But there are tools and techniques that can help us calm down, and everyone needs to calm down. It's not just me, and it's not just people that I know. It's everywhere around the country are up in arms about all sorts of things where we can just take a deep breath and learn to relax. Deep breathing is one of the tools that we can learn. There are tools and techniques that can be taught to you, and you can learn them if you're open to learning. Why do I know this? Because I was involved in addiction myself, and I learned to recover from it. I bent my knee to the tyrant addiction, but I did not have to stay down. I can stand up, hold my head high, look people in the eye, and I know how to calm myself down even when I get agitated. And I get agitated often, there's no question about it. But if I can calm myself down and be serene, peaceful, early in the morning, every morning, then I know that I can recover that sense, that feeling, anytime in the day. Whenever it happens, whenever I'm aware that I'm getting anxious or agitated, angry, or any of these emotions that can take me out of my feeling of peace and serenity, then I can pause, take a deep breath, and recover what I have already experienced already that day previously. My confidence is high that I can do that. And so once you do this over time, it's practice, it's trial and error. You get better at it. You find out what works for you, and then you use it. You find out what doesn't work, and you discard it. But when you find what works for you and keep using it, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter if they think it's silly. They don't. This doesn't matter what anyone else thinks if it works for you, and keep using it. Have confidence in yourself. As you recover, your judgment will increase, your discernment will increase. You will get better and better at knowing the internal resonance inside, which is the only true guide that we have. The internal resonance inside will tell you what's right and what's wrong. You don't need to read it in a book. You don't have to have it found. You don't have to find it online. It's inside us. It's always been there, and we've lost touch with it. And now in recovery, we've recovered that sense of the internal resonance, and it's our guide. So stay tuned to that. But besides deep breathing, are there any other tools and techniques? Yes, reach out and find someone who knows how to do this. Find a community of people that are working for this, and they'll have many suggestions for you. I have found for me, humor is another way. So if you are finding a situation frustrating, sometimes looking at it with a sense of humor can really help ease. Laughter is the best medicine. They've always said that. And that's definitely been true for me. That's been my experience. So, there are other ways of doing it. And, changing your perspective, changing the way you think about something is also one of the ways that it's an it's a time-tested practice that works for calming ourselves down. Just look at something differently. Take a step back. Don't think of it as something that you have to solve right now. Usually sometimes no action is as good or if not better than any other action. So these are the types of things. But if you have struggled with addiction, it's it's a deadly situation for you. You can't afford to have resentments. You can't afford to be anxious and agitated all the time, because that will lead to relapse. Those are the time-tested ways of going about it that are incorrect for addicts. They must recover. They must stay calm. They must be able to calm themselves down, because they will get agitated. I know I did. They will get anxious. I know I did. And there are ways to calm yourself down. But the things we talked about in previous episodes, shame. There's no place for shame. And you look at people, you with your head held high, looking people in the eye, because it's not a shameful thing. Addiction is all over the country. It's affected almost all the families that we've involved. But people look at you and they will look down their nose at you. But what people think of you is none of your business. Don't care what they think. It's not shameful to have struggled with addiction. So you got a light inside, let it shine. Let it shine brightly. And it doesn't matter what other people think. So, the other question that we talked about is anonymity. There's a lot of programs that tell you, don't talk about it, because people won't understand. And it's true. It's best if you find people that know what they're talking about because they've been there, they've experienced it, and you can share things with them that really establish a connection that you can't really establish with someone who hasn't been through the same types of things. But it's not entirely necessary. But the thing is that the anonymity aspect of it, in my opinion, is you do not out anyone else. You do not tell anyone that someone else is an addict. However, you can say that I am an addict. This is what the gay community taught me. I'm out. I'm proud of it. I've recovered. I wrote this book, and I wanted to call attention to this book because, I wrote it for doctors and therapists and people because nobody told me I had choices. But this book, Freedom, Your Path to Recovery, it's not my path, it's your path. You find what works for you. That's what the most important thing is. It's available on Amazon. It's available probably wherever you buy books online. Maybe it's in your bookstore that you favor, but I can't guarantee that. But I do know that you can get it online. And I do recommend it because it talks about my path, my experience, my strength, and my hope. And it's a message of hope for everyone. So that's the end of the introduction to this episode 6 of Calm Down with James Eade. And we're going to go into a little segue until the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and we're bringing in our senior correspondent from LA, Rick Rosner. Rick, hello, Rick.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. And I'm hoping that you have something you want to talk about that's causing you a little bit of disquiet.
I'm not that bugged today. Sorry.
That's okay.
Because this is, the day after Biden announced he was leaving, and it looks like Kamala Harris will be the nominee, though, that's not set yet.
Right.
And, my wife told me yesterday for the first time in weeks, she's not depressed. And there's a certain amount of euphoria. They've raised $80 million from small donors in the last 24 hours. She seems to have fewer points to hammer for the Republicans to hammer her on than Biden does. And the stuff they're coming up with is stupid. Like Laura Loomer is one of the bigger lunatics among the right-wing pundits, saying, she can't be a president because she's not a mom. She's never given birth, which disqualifies every
all
president.
The men.
Yeah. Some people are saying, she had a relationship with Willie Brown, an old school politician who was, when she was in her 30s,
right.
And he was 30 years older, except that the Trump's married to a woman 30 years younger. So all of it's garbage. I think there are points to hammer her on, but they haven't done it yet. So far, all the criticisms have been stupid. I think the grim truths will start setting in over the next week or so, that, maybe Trump will continue to outpoll her, but she's the first, attractive candidate, physically attractive candidate we've had since Obama, charismatic, nice hair, and Americans go for that stuff.
Right.
So, but if I have to be upset about something, let's talk about COVID.
Okay.
So COVID numbers are as high as they've ever frickin' been. We're on the upslope of a big ass peak, and this is we're 4.5 years in, and I think a lot of Americans decided COVID was over, a year and a half ago.
Right.
And so a lot of people are getting sick and are surprised that they're getting sick or think it's a cold. They're not getting vaxxed anymore. But COVID is just as debilitating this time around. And I have a theory. I don't know if I've talked about it here. I think COVID might make you susceptible to fascism.
Whoa.
And here's my argument. The Spanish flu of 1918 through 1920. Now, they said it ended in 1920, but it might be just like COVID, they just got tired of dealing with it, of talking about it, and just kept rolling on. So if you look at what happened to the world after the Spanish flu, which I don't know, like half the people in the world got, you know, and most of them in Western countries because it was spread by the end of World War I. People were, traveling
It was
from
a horrible pandemic. Yes. That's
right. And it had known mental debilitation. It gave some people sleeping sickness or a variety where there's a movie about this with De Niro and Robin Williams about a guy who figured out how to it paralyzed him for 50 years. 50 years later, Oliver Sacks, a doctor, a
great
writer,
Oliver Sacks. Yes.
figured out if you gave the people who'd been frozen and basically put to sleep by Spanish flu, if you gave them L-Dopa, a Parkinson's medicine,
Right.
you could wake them up for a while.
Right.
So the movie is Awakenings, which shows De Niro, a man, who'd been stuck for decades, being awakened for a while.
And Robin Williams plays the doctor.
I think so.
I
yeah.
remember this movie now that you bring it up. Yes, Awakenings. Yes.
All right. So, but if you look at the world history after and maybe during Spanish flu, if it just kept rolling on, 1922, Italy goes fascist. The 1930s, Germany, Japan goes fascist. Like half the world goes fascist. We have a depression. And then eventually, by 1939, we're in a world war. So it might be, and, I have anecdotal proof just based on the drivers in Los Angeles. Everybody has less impulse control, is angrier. And COVID, I read a study that said that if a case of COVID, bad enough to hospitalize you, ages your brain 20 years. It did this to my mother-in-law. She wasn't hospitalized, but she was in senior living with mild cognitive decline.
Right.
2 years after getting COVID, she was dead of Alzheimer's. So if COVID eats your brain, and it probably does, it may make you more susceptible to like shitty politics, which we're in the middle of.
And, facts don't seem to matter anymore. It's kind of like it's your emotions that matter when it comes to talking to people that are their voting preferences and such. But, it's interesting, Rick, because I got COVID for the first time. I had jury duty. And when I got out of jury duty, I had COVID. And
some a-hole gave it to you.
Yes. The person sitting next to me was complaining about a headache. And then, any case, I caught it from her, and I haven't felt the energy level. And the people that I go to yoga once a week, and the two instructors there have come down with it, and one of their instructors, their husband, did. So I noticed just in my sphere of influence an uptick is what I think of it as in COVID in general. But I got it for the first time. I've been doing everything that they had been telling me.
Did you go on Paxlovid?
I did not. My wife did when she got it, and the yoga instructor I was working with did. I did not, I maybe to my regret, because it took me a while to recover my old. I don't think I still have recovered my old energy level. I still feel that there has been.
Yeah, I tried to get Paxlovid ahead of time, so I've got it handy. They will not do that. I'm fully a hypochondriac, but I don't want to get debilitated. I'm debilitated enough just by being 60 fucking 4.
Yeah.
And the CDC and as much as I'm a Dem, Biden are complicit in this. The CDC is a chicken shit organization. There's a book by Michael Lewis about the history of the CDC and COVID and how they got scared of, taking aggressive positions because of swine flu, which was more than 40 years ago?
It was a long time ago, right?
So what happened is they made a bad bet with swine flu. They said it's going to be terrible. So everybody needs to get vaxxed. And then a ton of people got vaxxed, got sick from the vax, and swine flu wasn't bad.
Yeah.
So since then, the CDC has been less than aggressive in going after disease. And
the anti-vaxxing thing, the Robert Kennedys of the world, they seem to not base their reasoning in facts, but on emotion, as I said earlier.
Freaking Robert Kennedy, sex addict, whose second wife hanged herself after she found his sex diary, his extramarital sex diary, ex-heroin addict, current testosterone abuser. He's 70 years old. He's got big old meaty pecs because he's red. He's, if you
and his whole family, it wants him to shut up and go away.
Yeah, freaking. I wanted to. Lost my point. Oh,
sorry, I interrupted.
But this is where we talk about what can you do about the thing that's pissing you off.
Mm-hmm.
I can only do with regard to COVID. I can tweet about it every once in a while, but I can. I continue to mask up when I'm at the gym. I continue to get in and out of do my sets, get the fuck out. Mm-hmm. Now gym behavior has changed. It now involves sitting on a machine and looking at your phone, which is super annoying to me. But I leave my phone in the car. I try to get in and out, do like 20 sets super fast, get out before some dickhead, gives me COVID. And like if there's somebody coughing around me, my wife might roll her eyes, but I get, I move the fuck away. It's crazy how many people know exactly, like who gave you COVID.
Yes.
Most
no idea. Yeah.
No, most people I think have an idea. I was in an Uber. The driver was coughing.
Oh, okay.
So
I see.
Get the fuck away from those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get vaxxed. I'm getting vaxxed next week.
Yeah, the vaccinations are definitely something that people need to get over themselves and get.
I remember the point. The orange guy.
Yeah.
Trump.
Homelander.
Yeah, wouldn't wear a freaking mask.
Right.
Because he was afraid that it would mess up his facial bronzing makeup. And so for months and months, he politicized masks.
Right.
But, I'm lucky. I live in LA. Well, maybe not that lucky because I've always kind of been itching to get in a tussle with some a-hole. And LA is there aren't that many a-holes who will give you crap for wearing a mask. I got in a minor verbal exchange at the gym with some high school dickheads, but I just told them to fuck off. And it turns out my aunt, who's a little bit Trumpy, asked my wife at a birthday party why I was wearing a mask, but I was away from the table and she said she handled it, which is probably good because I would have gone nuts on her. This lady's a nurse too.
Yeah, it's a shame. But I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, so there's no hassle. But I have noticed that there's a diminishment of people wearing masks.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's me and maybe one other person in a crowded public space.
Right. So you get upset about COVID, and what do?
You just take precautions and then hope that you're not unlucky.
And the other thing,
one more thing I do.
Okay.
If I'm passing through a group of people,
mm-hmm.
I'm masked at the gym. I can always exhale because if you're blowing out, and you can blow out for 20 seconds, which will get you through a group of people.
Okay.
If you're blowing out, the fucking COVID can't get in.
Yeah. Okay.
So just like, if it's crowded near the entrance and you're leaving, just, you walk, go, and then when you're out the door, you breathe in. And it sounds like craziness, but it makes sense. It's basic physics.
Yeah. And it's a tool or technique that you can use to help you not get upset or anxious. And the other thing I heard you say, which is very important, is if you can change your environment and your environment does not suit you, it's making you feel anxious or agitated for whatever reason, change your environment. That's one of the things you can always do. And if you can't, because I shouldn't have said that, sometimes you're stuck in an environment and then you have to use a different tool or technique. But that is one of the tools that I use all the time, is if I don't like the environment I'm in, get out of it.
Yeah, and also just arm yourself with knowledge.
Yes.
And reason. Like I figured out the breathing out thing. I've never read anything about it.
All by yourself.
Yeah, but it's like, it makes sense.
Sure. Absolutely. And, masking up, my wife and I used to go 3 times a week to the gym. And since COVID, we haven't gone back. And part of it is that I've been ready to go, but she hasn't. And
LA has a bunch of gyms. I quit the gym that had the worst mask enforcement policy. That was Gold's in North Hollywood. And Gold's, has a lot of serious bodybuilders.
Right.
And so they work out hard. They're going, they're sweating. And the machine I like to use there, because every gym I have, preferred things to do. That took me on the longest walk past knuckleheads. So I'm like, okay, I don't need this membership. I can get done what I need to do at less risky places.
Yeah. Yeah. So take things under as much as you control, change the things that you can change. And there's some things that you have to accept because you can't change them, but change the things you can. And
COVID gave us a bunch of good TV. And, my wife and I will watch like 2 hours a night, and we'll do some exercising while we're watching.
Why not? Right. I do.
Yeah, you just mentioned Homelander,
Yeah.
which is the main villain on the Prime series, The Boys, and which had to issue a disclaimer in its finale, because the finale, which they filmed months or a year ago, came way too close to what is actually happening in politics right now.
Oh my goodness.
So if you haven't seen the finale, a lot of stuff happens.
Okay. I'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah. I say Homelander there because he's a parallel to Trump. Everybody in that is based on it's a parody of somebody, and the DC Comics universe. And
yep. Well, and Homelander is if Trump had the powers of Superman.
Yeah. If Superman didn't care about innocent lives and would X-ray vision, or not X-ray vision, but heat vision them to death at random, that's Homelander. But that's how I feel. Trump doesn't care about the average person. He only cares about his own self and his own power, and that's one of the choices we have for president of the United States. Country has to be able to do better than this.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that Biden has stepped aside. I'm not sure, Kamala Harris would have won the primaries if they had gone through that process, which is the normal way of choosing your nominee. But, she's certainly viable. I remember watching her as a senator grilling people that were testifying before Congress. She was fabulous.
Well, she has 27 years experience in law enforcement.
Right.
Almost 14 years as an assistant or deputy DA, 7 years as San Francisco's main, the
right.
DA, 6 years as California's attorney general. So
right.
I'm sure has gotten up in front of a courtroom and, laid out the facts hundreds of times.
Right. Yeah, she was brilliant at that. And also, I think she's going to hit the issue of choice. I think that's going to be one of the leading decisions people make about whether they want a government banning abortion, which will happen under a Trump administration. They're trying to soft pedal, but there's really no covering that up. I mean, that's the intention. So, well, thank you, Rick. And change your environment. Learn. You use the deep breathing technique of breathing out which I like, which you figured out all by yourself. That's definitely possible. Sometimes these things are trial and error. You try it. If it works, great. Keep it.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks again. When we will
Surely.
see you. We might take a week off, but we will see you soon.
All right.
Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye, Rick. Thank you for watching the show, and thank you for watching that segment with Rick Rosner, our senior correspondent from Los Angeles. And thank you again for watching Calm Down with Welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade. This segment of the show is going to be dedicated to the yamas and niyamas. This week, we're going to talk about aparigraha. I think I said that correctly. And I'm going to bring in Yudhishthira to tell me whether or not I did. He's the yoga instructor. Hi, Yudhishthira. How about it? Did I get it right?
You said it perfectly.
Okay. I'm so proud of myself. And what does aparigraha mean?
Well, first of all,
It's the
it's
yama.
helpful. Yeah, it's helpful to put it into context, and so I'll actually start with with that particular point. Aparigraha is usually translated into English as non-attachment, and it's as good of a starting place as anything. You have to begin somewhere with each of these. But as you begin to explore them, it becomes clear that the goal that perfecting any one of these yamas or niyamas leads to the same place as perfecting any other one.
Right.
And that same place is called by whatever name you like, but liberation, self-realization,
Enlightenment,
union, with the divine.
yoga.
However you words they're in some ways they're really, really important, and in other ways they could not have less meaning because they are so they're really dodgy. I mean, they sort of point you in the right direction, but it's not exactly the same thing in English as it is in Sanskrit.
Right.
But nonetheless, we have to begin somewhere, and so non-attachment is a good beginning point.
Good. And as you were saying, or implying at least, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't do any of these in isolation. They're basically something that it's part of your practice. Understanding them individually is important, but it in the context of all of them together is to leading a way of life that leads to what we ultimately want, which is enlightenment or self-realization or whatever, however we put it. So this is the focus today on one yama, but it's only one of the total package of yamas and niyamas and yoga practice in general.
Yes.
Okay.
And in terms of non-attachment in particular, it's helpful to sort of separate it to because we have two yamas. Not last week, but the week before, we spoke about asteya or non-stealing.
Right.
And it's the two are they intersect. They can come close to one another at times. However, the easiest way of thinking about the difference to me is that non-stealing means wanting something that is not rightfully yours, either something that is of a material or non-material reality. It doesn't really matter. It's something that it could be think about seeing someone else's partner, someone else's husband or wife, and wanting the relationship that you see those other people have, that you think they have.
Right.
And you want that for yourself. Or
Yeah.
you might even want that very person, for yourself. At least that's a fantasy in your head. Right. The reality becomes very different if it actually happens.
Right.
And so non-stealing is wanting something that is not rightfully yours. Another term for non-attachment that sometimes is used is non-hoarding. And, we live in a country where I think there are even reality TV shows focus on people who are hoarders. And I think it's only in order to make the viewers look better, feel better about themselves, to see people who are more extreme than they are in their attachment to material possessions.
Right. And I wrote down something that was very recently. It's turned to. Let's see if I can find this. It's like the lower astral entities are attracted to clutter. And I wrote it down because I went, whoa, I better declutter.
Well, and it's a point that for some people they would just totally blow it off as being like just just sort of made up or imaginary sort of stuff. I mean, when you talk about lower entities,
what does that mean?
For anyone who's ever read the autobiography of a yogi, there are chapters in there that are pretty challenging to take in. Mm-hmm. There's a chapter in there where Sri Yukteswar appears to Yogananda after Sri Yukteswar has died. He reappears in the flesh. I mean, he is physically there, and in order to convey to Yogananda some information. And one of the things he talks about is in this particular realm in which he is working, that these entities are there, and they are very, very elevated entities, but that there are other realms where the entities are lower. I don't want to get too far off our topic, but the Buddhists have this idea of bardos, of different levels of afterlife, in which there are very dark places and dark beings, and there are also very light places and very light beings. So it's not all that far out, really. But it's true. One of the great teaching stories at Ananda early on was that, Ananda village originally was it was very, very rugged, and there was not a lot of electricity to all the dwellings. Oh, yeah. People were gardening in order to make things work, and the gardeners had left some tools around, and a visiting Swami from India came and looked around and said, "Those tools should not be thrown there. It will attract lower entities." And thereafter, Swami Kriyananda, the founder of Ananda, and everyone else made it a point that everything was put away exactly where it should be. So
I see.
Yeah. But this idea of non-attachment is it. Here's one of the ways I think about it, Jim, is that if you think about you as a center of in the middle of a series of concentric circles, mm-hmm. and every circle represents something that is either of a material or non-material value. And the further away those circles are, the easier it is to detach yourself. For example, if I see a Bentley driving around, as much as I like cars, I am not in any way impacted by not having that Bentley.
Right.
And, I don't know about you, but I don't know. I tried counting at one point. I couldn't count any higher than, maybe I've had 60 or 70 or 80 or 100 cars in my life. I used to go through cars, and, one would go away and great, it's gone, and so those were rings that were pretty far away from me. But things get a little bit more intense the closer you get to you. There's a great exercise that I used as part of another program that you were not in that particular program, but it's a program about non-attachment and the reality that we live in. And it goes like this, is that everyone in the program, everyone in the workshop, writes down those things that are of value to them. Possessions, things, cars, houses, things like that. People, relationships, in other words. people in their lives, and they write those things down on each thing on a individual piece of paper, and then they stick it all over them. All right.
Interesting.
And then they close their eyes, and the angels in the room, who are the teachers, go around, and while the person's eyes are closed, they remove, and not with any intention. They're not looking for something to remove. It's just removed. And so then when the exercise is ready to move on, the people in the workshop open their eyes and they see what's been taken. And I have seen people literally dissolve into tears.
Wow.
And it's understandable, because as you get closer and closer in to those things that we are attached to, when they're removed, and they will be, when they're removed, there is a pain. Death is certainly a great example.
Sure.
And, I've had in my lifetime, death has been a great teacher for me. It really has. And from the time I was, at 17, I had a sister who was 5 years my senior. She died in a horrible fire in an accident.
Wow.
My grandparents died in a horrible, in separate ways. One was sort of tragic, the other just very quick. But then my parents, of course, then I had an adult son who died.
Wow.
And a brother who died. And so I was getting pretty good, I thought, at dealing with death. It's not that I was without the human emotions. And this is an important point. Non-attachment does not mean suppression.
Right.
It does not mean that you stuff your feelings. It's rather that you learn to use those feelings and to bring them inward to the heart, rather than letting them just pour outward from the heart in despair and grief. You learn to bring those energies back in, and using the tools of yoga, we begin to lift them up and offer them back to the divine. And this is how everything works.
And I can, if I may, take the opposite perspective and say something that is creating joy, something that I desire or want, something that is making me feel the way I want to feel, for sake of just for the language. And I would want to hold on to that, to keep it.
And that is such a really good point, because of the fact that it's not just the tragedies,
Yes.
but it is those things that we really love.
Right.
And for me, this great lesson came when my wife, back in 2018, we knew she had cancer, but we thought we had some time. Yes. And and within a matter of like literally 96 hours from the time we saw the doctor the last time to her giving me a hug and saying goodbye and then leaving, it shocked me. It threw me into such a level of grief that I had never experienced before. And it took some real work. I mean, at some point, if you ever want to talk about how to deal with grief, that's a whole other subject. My point is really this, is that there is a value in practicing non-attachment where we are able to successfully do it now. And that is to say, begin to find ways to actively work, to feel in advance, if this is taken away from me, how would I deal with it?
Right.
And it's not just a mental exercise.
No.
I was with some biological family yesterday. They were visiting from out of town, and this is my first cousin. Her dad and my dad were brothers, but they were 18 years apart.
Wow.
Whereas my uncle and I were were like 9 years apart. So it's more like he and I were the brothers.
Uh-huh.
But my uncle died a couple of years ago, and I could, as soon as we began to talk about that, about her dad's, my cousin's dad's death, it still is there as a grief-causing event in her.
Sure.
So you can't begin with those things and expect to be successful. But one of the things that you can do is to take the things that you have and begin to give them away. That is one of the most successful practices of non-attachment. And they might even be things that you are actively using or that you really like.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
That you really, really like. And money is a great opportunity because so many people have so much fear around money. And it's a great thing to do to consciously give money. One of the principles of a spiritual life, and I'm not even talking just about yoga, is the idea of tithing.
Yes.
And the idea of tithing is a very universal practice well, let me say, it's gotten skewed by a lot of organizations to make the organization wealthy. But the real value of tithing is a personal practice and understanding that everything, including the money we have, originates not from us, but is a gift from the divine that is divinely given. We have to do our part, but then are we going to be attached to it, like you were just saying, in terms of the things that give you joy? All right, so I need enough money to live, but how much money do I really need?
Right.
And so one of the things that I have learned to do through the years is to give money freely to others and to, in my case, Ananda, because I know that that is going to help other people find joy in their lives. So this,
and if I may, I had another thing that popped into my head while you were talking, is that when we if we do like something or want something or have something that we like, and we give it away, part of the lesson is that you're going to be okay.
Yep.
When you give something away, you think you can't live without, and you find out you're just fine without it.
It's so true. And one of the most recurring reminders of this is people who have been hit by a natural disaster. They've lost everything. And so often they find that their lives are better, that they are renewed by having gotten rid of everything.
Wow.
Everything was taken.
Right.
So just to sort of bring things together, what aparigraha, what non-attachment looks like in daily life, is living simply. And again, within Ananda, I have, many friends who are, financially speaking, extremely wealthy, and they are unaffected by it. That's their karma. I have never been able to do that. Whenever I've had a lot of money, it tends to skew the way I behave, the way I think, the things I buy. And so I've learned to find moderation. So simplicity is one key way to practice non-attachment. Another is to live ethically.
Sure.
All right. To follow simple, basic rules. Everybody knows what the golden rule is. And the golden rule is a good beginning. Every spiritual path has some version of the golden rule.
Right.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But it goes a little bit beyond that because of the fact that we can treat that as sort of a transactional approach. If I'm nice to them, they're going to be nice to me.
Right.
Well, what if they're not nice to me? Can I continue to be nice to them? And it all comes back to a bottom reality that, again, I'm expressing this from the yoga point of view, as Yogananda expresses it, that there is a simple truth that God is love. Can we love equally one another as we love those who are our children or our spouse? And the answer, of course, is probably not yet, but I can work on it, and I can begin to do small things to be kind and loving to people, even if I don't know them at all. So I think, as I'm looking at our clock, I think we're there.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and man, I've got so much decluttering to do.
Yeah. Well,
I will have joy giving things away.
Yeah, you see what's behind me. You don't see what's around me right now. So when we get off, I'm going to straighten up this space that I'm in.
We're all works in progress.
And also, just to, for anyone who's watching and listening to this, next week we'll shift into the niyamas, which are active practices that we want to do and incorporate into our lives rather than things we want to not do. So that's where we'll pick up next week.
Thank you so much again for your time and wisdom that you shared. And you're a channel of the wisdom from the past, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Blessings, my friend. Thank you.
Well, Yudhishthira, once again, finishing up on the yamas. Next week, we'll go on to the niyamas. This is Calm Down with James Eade. And with the next segment is going to be a favorite of mine. It's going to be someone who says goodbye better than I do. Thank you very much. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.